up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with the almighty Necrofier. Thank you, Christian, for being here. It's great to have you here.
Good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. I wish I started recording just a few seconds earlier just so I could have caught your cat in the bottom left corner.
Oh, yeah. Running around the house.
Yep. Those are my favorite types of Zoom interviews with the cat photobombing the whole thing. But first off, happy October 1st. No better way to celebrate. But we got Prophecies of Eternal Darkness coming out October 22nd via Season of Mist. This is the debut Necrofier album. What was the sort of thought process going into the making of this album? Was there kind of like a preconceived idea? How did Prophecies of Eternal Darkness sort of see the light of day?
It started off, I would say, more on the music side, where we put stuff together, and then kind of the concept of the album started. It wasn't an overall concept when I started, but it kind of just linked a bunch of things together, and then it finally came to like fruition, where it was like, okay, cool. This is centralized the record kind of around like man being kind of like in the darkness, doesn't really, stuff happening around you don't see, and then just kind of went from there. I mean, it kind of goes off topic, and it was recorded in 2020, so there's a lot of stuff about death and other things in there too.
Yeah, definitely. For the first three singles that you released, The Black Flame Burns, Madness Descends, and Betrayal of the Queen, is that maybe a good representation of what the entirety of this album is going to sound like, or is there a lot more to be discovered?
There's a lot more. I feel like those are those three diverse songs we have. So I'm excited for everybody to hear the rest of it. But I figured we'd cover like the whole spectrum of what we want. Like those are the most diverse ones we have. So
Yeah, I consider this album to be sort of like a smorgasbord of black metal because I do see a lot of like that traditional black metal aspect behind it, from Mayhem to Emperor to Dark Throne, but I see like a lot of modern elements into it as well, where people who listen to bands like Behemoth or Watain could also appreciate it in addition.
and there's also there's elements of heavy metal and death metal in it too. So it's kind of it's diverse and not just say like just straight like this is exactly what every song sounds like. Everything's a little different.
Well, can that also be as a result? Because I do consider Necrofire to be sort of like a super group in a way, being that you have a lot of members who played with multiple projects as well. Do you think that maybe for you as well as for the other members that maybe you kind of like use your different projects and kind of like combine it into one, or are you all trying to like distance yourselves from the other projects you're
I
involved
mean, we
with?
tried to go straight up to make this a black metal record, but that being said, just because of all the other influence we have, that stuff starts shining through.
Yeah.
Dauber's been playing death metal forever, but he's been doing Oceans of Slumber forever. So I mean, all like just little things sneak in, and I do a heavy metal band, I've been in that kind of stuff forever. So you see, just like aspects of it, like the band's predominantly, I would say, black metal, and then there's other aspects of just different music all over the place that kind of sneak in.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there was sort of like a concept that sort of developed along as you were further songwriting. Did maybe thinking of this concept also help shape the musical direction as well, or maybe helped shape the sort of sound that we're hearing?
Mm, Maybe vocally and like and stylistically in that part. A lot of the music we had already been working on, so I'd been throwing concept ideas around, but it wasn't like the concept was dictating how the music sounded on this one.
Okay. And do you want it to be more like open to interpretation, or are you trying to maybe engage the listener into what the meaning of this album can be about?
Um, Open for interpretation is usually what I go to with lyrics. I mean, there's like varying themes and other things like that, but for the most part, I feel when you read lyrics and things like that, what you take out of it is what's better than me telling you what you're supposed to feel when you listen to this.
Well, what like are you coming from like more of a personal place with this sort of stuff subject matter? You mentioned like there's a lot of
It's
subject.
like a lot of stuff when I write songs for like or lyrics for Necrofire. It's kind of me exploring kind of topics I don't like, either want to dive more into or just like like unknown things, like spiritual kind of things, just different things that I don't know. It's kind of like say like the cover art is basically a bunch of like souls and demons and stuff, and it's just like people lost in like kind of an eternal struggle kind of thing, where there's not many things like some people just pay attention to whatever's in front of them, and then there's other things going on. Except that's kind of where I started, then just went off with that.
Was there almost kind of like a lot of research that was involved in terms of your
Yeah, I
lyrical?
do. Like usually when I get into that kind of stuff, and I start like I try to read as much as I can, but I start reading more. I read more on a topic, so I'm kind of like, okay, this is where I'm going to go. So I'll read a bunch of stuff in that, and then even between that, listening like movies, listening to other bands, just stuff that gets into that topic. Then I'm like, I just start diving into it, and then usually until I get done with all the lyrics for the whole record, I'm just like in that kind of like, oh, this is what I'm doing. So everything I kind of take in is in that kind of mode.
Do you ever have lyrics written before there's any music, or do you prefer to like have like a song template so you know like so you don't go like 10 syllables over the arrangement or something like that?
So I'll write like kind of like a sketch for lyrics, but I don't ever like really put anything concrete down until we have the songs done, because I still think the phrasing usually depends on how the song should be.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of take what I had and then I'll adapt, like, kind of like a rough sketch of it, and then adapt it to what's going on with the actual song, like when it gets finished.
Yeah, and and it's important too because I feel like sometimes lyrics could ultimately, for a lot of like diehard listeners, like lyrics could also are just as important as the sound of the song as well. I think like if the lyrics aren't convincing enough, then like it could ultimately like hinder the overall experience of the sonic
Oh
experience.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like thinking about different things, or just I don't know, if lyrics are just completely whack, it's just you're looking at it and you're, oh, I don't know what the hell's going on here, or
Do,
it can definitely do that.
What, but is your lyricism like? Because you mentioned like you were taking inspiration from like movies and other mediums of art. Is this almost kind of like your analysis of it or your interpretation of it, or is it almost kind of like?
Some of it is, some of it's like there's some personal stuff into it as well, but it's kind of like just kind of figuring out like some of these topics and then running into it. Like they're all kind of different. I can't like not one. It's not like one certain way.
Yeah,
So, but it's a little bit mix of all that,
yeah, and
like with personal things as well.
you attack it both like very literally and metaphorically as well.
Mm, yeah, for sure.
And being that you've played with so many other bands as well, such as Night Cobra and Graven Right, and Internal Champion and Venomous Maximus, like, is it almost kind of like a different mind frame depending on the project you're working in, or is there
I
almost?
think, yeah, for sure. Because like right now I do it's Necrofier and I do Night Cobra, and it's two completely different ways of kind of thinking art, how it's presented, how like it's like you would see the bands as like their own person, and then they're whole separate things. I mean, there's not the same stuff don't work for the both bands. You have to really kind of, I don't know, I put a lot of time into both of them, like kind of creating like the between the image and where they go. But yeah, I try to keep them completely separate because they have nothing to do with each other. So it's kind of like, yeah, you go into a whole different mindset.
Do you almost like portray a different side of like your personality, or like is it almost kind of like people are gonna see sides of you in Necrofire that's very different from Night Cobra?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like how, say, when we perform, like how I am on stage is different between both bands. I mean, like don't dress too much different, but it's like a little bit different. But it's definitely like it's a different part of me for both bands for sure.
With Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, you started like writing this in 2020. Is what we're hearing on this album like how these songs were originally structured and how they were originally written, or did these songs maybe change a lot over a span of time?
We worked this all out right before quarantine, like where we had like the songs as like all the music as a band. So we had already kind of or we had everything basically set up before we went into record of how we were going to arrange it. And then once we recorded everything, we kind of added different things into it and messed around like in that area, but we didn't like work with arranging a bunch because we already kind of hashed that out in the jam room.
For your songwriting process, do you prefer to write a little bit more alone in isolation? Isolation's a great feel for creativity, or do you prefer to be like in the company of other bandmates when you're thinking of ideas?
I like to work on stuff by myself and then kind of hash it out for a while until I feel comfortable with it, and then bring it to everybody else and then have them add afterwards. Is like the way I feel most comfortable usually doing it.
You almost feel like you have to. It's almost like a presentation in a way.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is all this, and then if someone's like, hey, why don't we try this here, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would work. Things like that. Where try to work out it as far as I can, and then bring it to everybody else. So then it kind, it's not just me doing this. It's like we're a band. So I feel like when you're a band, when you bring it to everybody else, and everybody kind of adds little things to it, or whatever. Like it's little touches with everybody else is what makes it a band instead of say like a one man project.
Can you ever see maybe Night Cobra and Necrofier doing a show together? Can you pull that double duty?
I don't. I mean, if not like back to back, I mean, I could probably do it, and depending on situation, but I'm not really shooting for that to happen.
Do like a Necrofier fest or something like that. Necrofier headlines, but everybody in your band also brings in the other projects that they're involved with too. So bring Oceans of Slumber on that bill.
That would be an interesting day. I don't know if Dauber wants to drum for 3 shows.
Eh.
It'd be a lot.
I interviewed him on Oceans of Slumber's tour with Insomnium back in 2018. Great guy and a fantastic drummer, but that guy is a beast. I'm pretty sure he could. I think he could handle it. You got this, Dauber.
Yeah, that's a lot though. Never say never.
Yeah, never say never. Bring that on the road too. Do it like a 30 date.
Oh, that's definitely not going to happen. But yeah,
yeah, never say never. Though that you guys are all involved in the sort of like Texas scene. You're currently based out of Houston as well, right?
Correct.
Yep. So like I've interviewed so many bands from Texas at this point, and there's like a great up and coming scene I've noticed with bands like Creeping Death on the rise. Bands I believe I Am is from there, but you also have Frozen Soul. Who's sort of been taken off from there. So many great bands and great people as well. How is sort of like the Houston scene been in the wake of everything happening now? Are like you guys working together, keeping venues afloat and everything like that?
Venues are starting to have shows. Texas has kind of been open for a little while. I mean, there's stuff going on, and obviously COVID exists, but Texas has had shows happening since the spring. But I mean, Houston has a really good metal scene. There's tons of stuff between like Oath of Cruelty. Most of the guys and everybody except for me from Necrofiers and Malignant Altar. Like Frozen Soul, Creeping Death, Steel Bearing Hand. There's a lot of stuff in Texas right now.
Yeah. Does the scene differ also? Because I heard like San Antonio has sort of like its own scene, Dallas has sort of its own scene, El Paso has its own scene. Like I heard like every like major city or something in Texas sort of like has like its own little underground scene in a way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, those are all big cities, and then in Texas, cities are 3-4 hours apart or more. So I feel like it all develops within itself, and then a lot of those dudes are in the same bands or like groups form because you play in the same city and you know each other and things like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine Texas is a good way to sort of feel your oats on how you can handle touring. Like before you tour the whole country, just tour like every 5 big cities in Texas, and that'll feel like its own tour.
Yeah, I mean, you can do like 5 dates pretty easy in Texas, and it works out well. And play 5 like basically major cities. So, and it's a decent amount of driving, but it's not crazy.
Yeah, and being that this is the debut album from Necrofier, can you see? I know I'm asking this way too far in advance, but is this maybe a good representation on the direction that Necrofier wants to go in the future? Are you sort of like testing the waters with this, or can you see yourselves maybe exploring similar subject matter on future albums?
Can't be for sure, but there'd definitely be different subject matter. Musical change, a little bit, things like that, just different directions. Okay. We'll see. I haven't really sat down to figure out like what concept for next record and things. Like I've been throwing around ideas, but nothing where it's been like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Okay. But do you ever start off with a preconceived idea of how you want it to sound like, or
sometimes usually come up with I'll come up with an idea of like the direction musically you want to go, and then after that sit down and then I'll just run ideas in my head until I figure out like what kind of like a lyrical concept, like at least something to stay in the middle. Like everything for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be singing about the same thing on every song, but like, somewhere it kind of correlates together.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time, as well as thank you for the special guest appearance in the background. You want to introduce? You want to introduce the little butt?
You want to do? He doesn't want to play.
Oh, all right. No, he just wants to photobomb the whole time. I thought he wanted like a special appearance, like promote my band too. Is there just anything else you would like to plug for Necrofier? Can you maybe bring this to New York City one day? We'd love to have you here.
Hopefully, we were trying to come to New York this fall, except COVID stuff just kind of, whatever. Don't have to really explain too much, but sometime soon for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christian. Everybody, we are here with Christian of Necrofier. Be sure to check out Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, coming out October 22nd via Season of Mist. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.